In the center of Osteria, within the mist-enveloped woodlands of the Blackwood Forest, a place known for its local legends and dense, dark conifers, exists a relic from a far more modern disaster. It is a lone, weathered streetcar settled upon a length of railway line that, after being overrun by vegetation, comes to an abrupt end in an isolated spot. To find it is to feel as if one has stumbled upon a glitch in the very texture of existence, because this profound wilderness is an unlikely location for a public transport vehicle. This specific streetcar is a ghost of Austerian engineering from the 1930s. Its curved, almost elegant shape is still visible beneath layers of rust and peeling paint. The glass from its windows is long gone, leaving behind dark, vacant openings that appear to absorb the silence of the surrounding forest. The impression is somber and desolate, but its story is about more than just decay. This streetcar is believed to be the first victim of the Great Ideological Schism. According to persistent local legends, the vehicle undertook its last run in 1946. It was part of a small transit network connecting local hamlets, which acted as a vital link for a population trying to rebuild in the aftermath of the war. The line, however, was tragically cut in two by the newly drawn border that divided the Crevonian and Alliance zones of occupation. On one specific day, the streetcar completed its run, pulling into its final stop just a yard from the invisible demarcation. It stopped in that place and was never moved again. This circumstance raises a number of troubling questions that form the basis of our investigation. Why was it left behind? In the chaos of 1946, borders were becoming more solid by the day, but cross-border movement had not stopped completely. Was this an act of quiet protest? A bureaucratic mistake in a world drowning in paperwork? Or maybe a more personal and tragic occurrence? Did the driver simply secure the streetcar after his route, go back to his house across the new line, and find out the next morning that he was permanently cut off from his job? This single, abandoned streetcar is not just scrap metal. It is a monument for an entire nation, marking the exact spot where a country was torn apart. To comprehend why a streetcar would be left to rust away in a forest, it is necessary to go back to the time it last operated. The year was 1946. The Second World War had been over for less than a year, but the continent of Continentia was far from peaceful. It was a continent of ghosts, destruction, and profound uncertainty. Osteria, in particular, was the epicenter of this post-war paralysis. The nation was not only physically shattered, it was also politically carved up, divided into 4 zones of occupation administered by the victorious Allied governments: the Alliance states, the monarchy, the Commonwealth, and the Crevonians. Our story is set in Sylvanheim, a region of rolling hills and ancient woods that was split down the middle by this new global order. The invisible boundary separating the Alliance and Crevonian zones sliced through communities and settlements that had been linked for centuries. This was not yet the concrete barrier, with its reinforced defenses and watchtowers. In 1946, the border was more porous and passable, but it became more defined with every passing day. Troops patrolled the woods, checkpoints appeared on country roads, and a simple trip to a neighboring village now required special permits, interrogation, and a great deal of luck. An ambient feeling of suspicion hung in the air, as thick as the morning fog. In this partitioned land, our small inter-village streetcar line was more than just a form of conveyance. It was a defiant artery of normal life. Its daily metallic noise was a form of rebellion against the silence of destruction. Its passengers were a cross-section of a society struggling to survive. There were women with baskets of precious food, hoping to trade them for other goods in the next village. There were men in worn-out coats on their way to clear rubble or to work in a factory that had miraculously survived the bombing campaigns. And there were countless others just trying to reconnect with relatives, scanning the faces at every stop with a desperate hope of recognizing a lost loved one. The ride was short, perhaps only 12 miles, but crossing from one zone to the other felt like traveling between different worlds. On one side, the Alliance soldiers brought a sense of cautious optimism and the occasional luxury of chocolate or cigarettes. On the other, the stern discipline of the Crevonian military created a more tense and watchful atmosphere. The streetcar was one of the last connections between these diverging realities. Every day it ran was a small victory for normalcy. But in 1946, normalcy was a fragile concept, and this crucial artery was about to be severed by forces far beyond its control. The abrupt halt of service for our forest streetcar was not a single dramatic event. There was no explosion, and no official decree has survived the decades. Instead, its fate seems to have been woven from the chaotic threads of the post-war world. Historians and local investigators put forward 3 convincing theories, each offering a different lens through which to view the streetcar's final days of operation. The first, and perhaps most mundane, theory is bureaucratic paralysis. In 1946, Osteria was a morass of paperwork. 2 giant, competing administrative systems, the Alliance and the Crevonian, were being imposed on one shattered country. Regulations changed weekly. A permit valid on a Monday could be worthless by Wednesday. It is entirely plausible that the streetcar service was halted by a new, obscure rule. A Crevonian commandant might have demanded a new type of pass for the driver, or an Alliance administrator might have decided the line required a different operating license. The streetcar could have been stopped temporarily, awaiting a stamp or a signature from a bureaucrat who had been reassigned or was simply overwhelmed. In the administrative chaos, temporarily stretched into permanently, and the forgotten streetcar became a monument to institutional inertia. The second theory is more strategic, an act of low-level economic warfare. A streetcar line is an economic artery. It moves workers to jobs and goods to markets. By cutting that artery, one side could effectively strangle the economic life of the villages in the other zone. If the main factory, market, or power station was now in the Alliance zone, the Crevonians may have seen little benefit in allowing their population to remain economically tied to the West. Stopping the line, perhaps by simply cutting the power or refusing passage, was a quiet but effective first move in the great game of the new ideological conflict. It was a way of saying, this territory is ours now. Its future is with us, not with them. The streetcar was not collateral damage. It was the primary objective. The third and most personal, poignant theory is the story of the last driver. History is not only made by armies and politicians, but also by the choices of ordinary people. Imagine the driver on that final day. He lives on the Crevonian side of the new border. He completes his shift, parks the streetcar at its designated terminus, and walks the short distance home. Overnight, the rules change. A new patrol is assigned, a new checkpoint established. The next morning, he wakes to find he cannot cross back to the depot in the Alliance zone to start his shift. His employers cannot send a replacement. The streetcar is stranded, a steel hostage separated from its operator, both victims of a line drawn on a map. The truth is likely a combination of all 3 possibilities. A bureaucratic snag may have provided the initial reason, which served a strategic goal and was ultimately sealed by the personal tragedy of one man caught in the gears of history. The streetcar did not just stop running. It was ensnared in a web of politics, economics, and human fate. When a historical account leaves a vacuum, folklore rushes in to fill it. In its more than 70 years of silent vigil in the Blackwood Forest, the derelict streetcar has transformed from a piece of machinery into a local legend, a canvas for the fears, hopes, and imagination of the surrounding villages. Its story has been told and retold over dinner tables and in village pubs, each telling adding a new layer of mystery. The most enduring legend is that of the Ghost Run. As the story goes, on certain misty nights, particularly on the anniversary of its last service, the old streetcar comes to life. Locals have claimed to see its interior lights flicker on, casting a faint, eerie glow into the dark forest. Some even insist they can hear the faint ring of its bell or the ghostly scrape of wheels on rusted track, as if the driver for 1946 is still trying to complete his final, impossible run. This story served as a powerful metaphor during the years of division. a ghostly reminder of a connection that was severed but not forgotten, a community forever yearning to be whole again. For many years, it was a tale told to frighten children away from the increasingly dangerous border zone. Another popular story cast the streetcar as a hiding place for lost treasure. This tale claims that in the final, chaotic days of the war, a high-ranking party official or a wealthy family, fleeing the advancing armies, hid a cache of gold, jewels, or important documents inside the body of the streetcar. The plan was presumably to retrieve it later, but they were either captured, killed, or unable to return. The streetcar's abandonment was thus a deliberate act to protect its secret cargo. This legend has attracted treasure hunters and adventurers to the site over the decades, armed with metal detectors and shovels, all hoping to strike it rich. They have found nothing but rusted metal and rotted floorboards, but the dream of lost riches keeps the story alive. A third, more somber myth frames it as the scene of a final, tragic farewell. In this version, the streetcar was the site of a clandestine meeting between lovers separated by the new border. They met one last time in the empty car, knowing they might never see each other again. In some variations, the tale ends in heartbreak. In others, it ends in tragedy, with one or both taking their own lives rather than face a future apart. The streetcar, in this telling, becomes a shrine to love and loss, a silent monument to all the personal connections shattered by the Great Divide. These stories, while factually untrue, reveal a deeper truth. They show how people grappled with the brutal, nonsensical reality of a divided nation. The ghost runs, the hidden treasures, the tragic lovers. These were all ways of imposing meaning onto an object that was a powerful symbol of powerlessness. The streetcar was not just an abandoned machine. It was a keeper of secrets, a vessel of collective memory, and a silent actor in the ongoing drama of a fractured land. While legends offer a romantic and often thrilling narrative, the truth of the forest streetcar is, as is so often the case, buried in archival files and the dry language of official reports. Recent investigations by dedicated local historians, piecing together fragments from both Australian and Crevonian archives, have finally assembled a clear and plausible story of the 1946 events. The answer, it turns out, is a pragmatic and uniquely post-war blend of logistics, economics, and politics. The solution to the mystery lies not in a single dramatic event, but in a series of calculated decisions. The streetcar line, known simply as Route 92, was operated by a municipal transport company whose headquarters, main depot, and power station were all located in a town that fell under Alliance control. A significant portion of the track, however, including the final terminus, ran into the newly established Crevonian zone. For the first year after the war, an uneasy cooperation continued. The Crevonians allowed the streetcar to operate because it was the only way for workers from their zone to reach a crucial textile factory in the Alliance territory. The factory needed the workers, and the workers needed the wages. The streetcar was the linchpin holding this fragile economic arrangement together. The turning point came in the summer of 1946. Records from the Crevonian military administration show a policy directive focused on economic rationalization. The Crevonians were beginning the systematic process of dismantling and shipping Australian industrial assets to their own country as war reparations. More importantly, they were determined to reorient their zone's economy eastward, cutting its dependence on the West. A memo from a mid-level Crevonian logistics officer provides the key evidence. It states that Route 92 is economically unviable and politically undesirable. The factory in the Alliance zone had started hiring displaced persons from elsewhere, reducing its reliance on workers from the Crevonian side. In response, the Crevonian directive ordered the cessation of cross-zonal transport on this line. The power from the Alliance side was to be cut, and the tracks on the Crevonian side were scheduled for removal, the steel needed for reconstruction elsewhere. On a day in late August of 1946, the order was carried out. The last streetcar of the day completed its run into the Crevonian zone. The driver, likely informed that this was the final run, parked the vehicle at the end of the line as instructed. He and any remaining passengers would have disembarked and walked across the now-sealed border for the last time. The power was cut from the other side. The streetcar was now a derelict asset. The Crevonian authorities had no use for a single Austerian streetcar. They had their own rolling stock and used a different track gauge. Dismantling and moving it was deemed more trouble than it was worth. And so it was simply left, not as an act of spite, not to hide a treasure, but because of a cold, rational decision typed on a piece of paper in a forgotten file. It was a casualty of logistical planning and the dawning reality of the ideological divide. Today, the Forest streetcar of Sylvanheim sits in the same place it was left in 1946. The world around it has changed completely. The Crevonian and Alliance soldiers are long gone. The great divide that once seemed so permanent has vanished, its checkpoints dismantled and its barbed wire fences rolled up. Osteria is a reunified nation, and the invisible line the streetcar could not cross is now just a faint scar on the landscape, visible only to those who know its story. The streetcar, however, remains. It has outlasted the political system that made it obsolete. It has become something more than a defunct piece of infrastructure. It is no longer a symbol of division, but a monument to resilience and the relentless passage of time. For decades, it was a forbidden object in a restricted military zone, the subject of whispered legends. Now, it has become a destination for a new kind of pilgrim, hikers, photographers, and history enthusiasts who make the trek into the forest to see it. They come not for treasure, but for a tangible connection to the past. To stand beside it is to feel the weight of history. You can lay a hand on the cold, rusted steel and imagine the world it once served. A world of ration cards, uncertain futures, and the quiet tensions of the early ideological conflict. The streetcar teaches a powerful lesson in perspective. To the planners of 1946, it was a trivial asset, a minor line item on a spreadsheet, not even worth the cost of scrapping. To the people who rode it, it was a lifeline, and its loss was a source of hardship and sorrow. Today, its value is neither economic nor functional, but historical and emotional. It is a reminder that big political decisions have concrete, physical consequences, and that history is not just an abstract story, but something that happens to real people and real things, like a single streetcar left for the woods to reclaim. It stands as a silent keeper of memory, a physical link to a story that might otherwise dissolve into textbooks. It shows that even the most mundane objects can carry the weight of an epoch, becoming accidental memorials. It is not a ruin. It is a survivor, a quiet storyteller whose very existence speaks volumes about the world that made it, broke it, and ultimately moved on without it.